I'm 5'8" on a good day.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th District 3 Advisory Board meeting. And we will get started this evening by calling for an approval of the agenda for February 7th, 2024.
Second.
So I have a motion by Mike and a second by Jerry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same. Okay, motion carries. And then I'll ask for approval of the minutes for January 3rd, 2024. Second. So I have a motion by Mike and a second by Jesse. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We're gonna move right on to staff reports, and we have Wichita Fire Department here.
Am I right here?
Can you go over here to
Oh,
this
yeah,
podium,
absolutely.
please? Thank you.
You're on camera.
We're cleared away in case there's a fire and you need to get out now.
Hello, my name's Captain Hyden. I'm assigned to Station 22 on Sea Shield. A little bit to talk about today. I'll start off with just kind of the normal things you guys are used to hearing as far as make sure your smoke detectors are up to date. Be careful with candles. Be careful with cooking, just things like that. Just some house cleaning type stuff. Some exciting news for my station. We are getting 2 new machines. We are getting a new truck, which is what you can see outside. It's a 100-foot aero platform. It's very nice. I'm very excited. Very excited. We're also getting a new engine. To replace one of our engines that we have now. And it is. It's like I'm a kid in Kansas. It is a beautiful machine. It is absolutely amazing. We went and looked at both of them today and they're phenomenal. That's really all I got. You guys have any questions?
Yes. Okay, they on the news they announced that they bought a empty lot for a new station they're gonna build, the city has. And in the process, they said they were gonna buy 9 additional. Will you have manpower? Or you think you'll be able to keep the manpower you've got and grow to fill 9 stations?
I wish I could answer that question for you, but that's above me. I'm sorry. I just heard about you're talking about the Permian Maze,
Yeah.
where they got some land out there. I heard about that about an hour ago. Like I said, I've been kind of tied up with.
Well, I'm in favor of it. I just thought, whoa.
No, I don't know what, if I were to give you any answers on that, it would be pure speculation, so I'd rather not.
Well, that's right. The city runs on a lot of that. So.
That's not my list. I can tell you that.
The last recruiting class, I think you guys had over 100 people apply.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so if we increase the number of, positions available, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to.
Well, that would have been a nice tag on the story that they were putting out, that they had a lot of applicants and they should be able to.
I know that we have been hiring like crazy.
Good, good.
Yes. I mean, I've got a pretty young crew over there.
Thank you.
Hey, no worries.
And on that note, with the 2, because there will be another station in northwest Wichita as well, in the near future. Those were the 2 places in our city that was had the longest response time as far as positioning of the fire station. So those were the 2 areas in biggest need. Those are going to be the 2 that we focus on here the next year or 2. And then it's more of a long-term thing with the 9 stations, so it might be a new one every year or 2 after that. So it won't be all 9 of them at once.
I'm gonna bring up my nugget I bring up every year. If we had a better land use program for the city to develop the properties in the empty buildings we have in this town. So I'm not against growth, but if we grow so bad, we have to have these services so far out. It stretches the budget and the capability to get to the fire when we need to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. I don't know if you can answer it, but where can I find information about required fire alarms in commercial buildings, required fire alarms and fire extinguishers? Any requirements regarding them?
That's a great question. And I do have an answer for you.
Okay,
That would be a downtown. So we have a a department within our department that is just, that's what they do. They do fire inspections and whatnot, and they have all the answers to all your code questions.
Okay,
So I'm more on the operation side.
right.
I ride the big truck and I go try and get fire. Well, I don't try, we do.
So just contact the
Contact
downtown.
downtown, 455 North Main,
Okay,
and tell them that you would like to speak with someone about some of the issues that you brought up.
okay, thank you.
And they should be able to answer your question.
Okay.
I would probably start with Chief O'Katie's.
Mark Chief Snow.
Chief,
We deal with, PPW projects,
There you go.
extending
yes,
fire services into buildings and stuff.
he's in charge of all.
Yeah.
And he's a good man.
I know Chief O'Katie's too.
Yeah. Good man.
Any questions from the audience? All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
You guys have a great night.
Do you have other guys that want to report too? Are some of these other guys gonna get up and say something, or is it just you?
Nah, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Good.
Getting ingrained.
I know, see, now that they saw how to do it, then they're not, they're gonna do it next time.
They're gonna do it next time, okay. You all stay safe out there.
Thank you guys for all you do.
Thank you for what you do. And it looks like we have Officer Jensen on Zoom.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Excellent. So, just a few things. Our recruits are in FTO right now. They're doing real well. They're working hard and learning every single day. Along with that, we have 35 in the new recruit class that's already going, which is awesome. And then the department continues to work really hard on recruitment and getting people through the interview process and the hiring process. That way we can fill our next class and get that going as soon as possible as well. In District 3, the main issues that we are seeing is the Hyundai thefts. We've been working really hard. We've made several arrests, but they continue to, be higher than what we would like and are wanting. So our team is continuing to work with the detectives, along with officers and everything like that, trying to continue to make the arrests and find the people responsible. And then the other issue that we're seeing is theft and burglary, which is most of those cases are people that are leaving either their vehicles or their garages unsecured. And it's people that are walking throughout the night, just basically checking door handles, seeing, an opportunity and taking that. So I just make sure to urge you guys and have you guys urge your neighbors and stuff just to secure your vehicles, secure your houses, and those things will ultimately come down. And then lastly, Patrol South Captain Hungria has announced his retirement. So we applaud him on making it through his career. And now we're just waiting to find out who is going to take his place to be the captain down south. So, and that's all I have. Officer Berger.
Can you guys hear me okay?
yes.
Okay. Good evening to everyone. I want to touch base on the Patrol East substation that's being built right now. Apparently they are on time and on schedule to have that built. If you guys didn't know, it's being built at like Lincoln and Pinecrest, so kind of over by Curtis Middle School. So it'll be nice to have that station in that area. I think the last update we got is that they are working on kind of finalizing all of like the internal like drywall and some office workspaces for like our sergeant, lieutenant, and our captain. So that's coming along really well. I think the expected move-in date is probably late spring. So all of us at Patrol East are really excited to move in there and have a new facility in that area. Some things that we are doing at Patrol East. We did 2 recruits that graduated the last academy. From what I hear, they're doing really well. they're working with the experienced officer on getting their experience built up, and hopefully they can be on their own, I think, in the summer here. Some of the things that we're doing as a team, as far as community policing, we continue to monitor our retail theft, which is really high. Patrol East has a lot of, businesses. We've got the mall. We have a lot of businesses on Greenwich, like Cabela's and our Target, Academy Sports, that we're seeing a lot of retail theft. We've been working with our larceny detectives to identify those people involved in those crimes and holding them accountable and making arrests if we can. Our team specifically did a retail theft location since our last, I think, last DAB meeting, and I'll expand on some of the results that we had from that. We arrested 6 total people. We cleared 11 warrants. We got 10 grams of methamphetamine, 2 grams of crack cocaine, 2 grams of marijuana, and we got 1 fluid ounce of PCP. We didn't have anybody that we identified get away from us, so everybody that we contacted was arrested. And all the property that was taken was also recovered, and we recovered $2,500 approximately in goods from that 2-day assignment. So it was really successful for us. Our team was also involved with the arrest of the jewelry store that we had at the east side. The theft was in excess of $13,000. We booked a 48-year-old female and referenced that. So it was really good arrest for our team. We still just continue to monitor some of our high crime areas that we're seeing. A lot of it's being perpetrated by juvenile offenders. So we're working a special assignment right now to try to address that particular area and those involved in that. So that's kind of all I have to update so far. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Dad?
I'm sorry.
So I have a question.
Yes.
And it's a very broad question, but I'm pretty shaken up by the number of shootings that have occurred where kids have died or youth have died, 14-year-olds, 14-year-olds going to jail for shooting, mom for shooting a 14-year-old. I'm just pretty distraught about the number of shootings that occurred over a week's time that involve our youth. Do you have any recommendations as a community? Because I work with nonprofits, that's what I do, and I run the Urban League of Kansas. And so there's a lot of programs going on out there in the community by nonprofits that don't seem to be making an impact because we continue to see violence occurring, going up. Do you have any suggestions what we as a community can do to help?
We're equally as shocked, because we're the ones that have to respond to those types of calls.
Yes.
They're not easy for us by any means. And it's very shocking to have young juveniles perpetrating extreme violence in reference to those types of cases. It's hard, and I think a lot of it has to, a lot of it could be gang violence. I don't want to speak on specifics, but I think there's a lot going on in these kids' home life that plays a factor in that, and that's hard for us as a department to combat. So it's getting these kids involved in stuff, where they can make a positive difference and have positive influences out in, a lot of it's, I think it's coming from home life. I can't say that for sure. I'm kind of speaking more on kind of my opinion and kind of what I've seen. It's a tough one. you know, it's because we're seeing youth offenders at very young ages committing very heinous crimes. And it's tough for us. You know, we don't really have the right answer, I think, you know. Right now, I am a leads instructor, which is kind of revamped DARE program. So right now I'm in schools teaching kids on making good decisions, how to manage their emotions and stress. So we're trying to reach these kids in school to try to hopefully give them tools as young, youthful adults, soon to be adults, to try to make good decisions and try to impact these kids in school. But it's tough. It really is. But you know, we see that trend. And if there's an avenue that we can work, we will. We have a juvenile intervention unit that's very active in trying to reach out to these kids that aren't quite creating or committing heinous crimes, and try to get them back on a path of, you know, making good decisions and seeing what's causing them to be influenced. So I appreciate the question. I hope I answered that for you. It's not a very easy one
I
to
appreciate
answer.
that. My perception is just like I do a lot with child abuse and neglect. We have to get into move into prevention, because we do a whole lot of intervention and not prevention. So how can we redirect, or how can we direct those kids before they end up in gangs? And I think overall what I see is we just don't do enough prevention. We try to intervene and redirect. We try to stop. Same with child abuse and neglect, but not enough prevention. And so I just was curious about what your thoughts were about that, because I don't think we're doing the right thing. So thank you.
And
Appreciate all, because I know that's got to be really tough. And I've worked a lot with Travis Rakestraw on a number of different initiatives, and I know it's tough.
Yeah, and part of the lead curriculum is Too Good for Violence as well. So it's a two-part curriculum, and we're currently doing that right now. So hopefully we can see after this gets rolling for a little while. Hopefully it makes an impact. It kind of allows us as officers to have a personal interaction with these kids and you know, hopefully steer them in the right direction. So we're trying. Trust me, if there's something that we can do, we're already trying to work on that as a department as a whole. So
Yeah,
I certainly
Thank you.
appreciate the question. Yeah.
appreciate it.
You know, one more.
Mike?
Oh, yeah, with all the activity that's been going on, are you getting any leads on the pipeline that's bringing all the guns into the city? You have any idea why we have such an abundance of guns for young people?
Yeah, I don't have a real honest answer for that. How these people are getting their hands on them. You know, I think some of it, you know, people leave guns in vehicles, unlocked or unsecured. That's kind of one way. You know, it's hard to really say for sure on exactly how they're getting their hands on them. You know, we try to work that angle when we get a gun off an offender that's not supposed to have it. Oftentimes we're met with a lack of cooperation, so it's hard to trace it back. So, but we try our best to work that lead or angle. Sometimes this doesn't work out for us.
Thank you.
Jerry? Oh, you have a question? Did I get everybody on the dab? Anybody from the audience have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you so much for all the work that you do, and we really appreciate it, and stay safe out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, next up we have Wichita Public Library. Hi.
Okay, so I have a relatively short report tonight. If anybody of you don't know me, I'm Robin Douster. I'm the Community Services Librarian for Walters Library out on East Harry. And one of the things that our communications director wanted to really bring forth was our Celebrating Wichita's Black History Month that we're doing every Thursday from 1st of February to the 29th of February. We just had our first one on the 1st over Black educators. And on the 8th, tomorrow, will be the Wichita African American Business Project. They're holding them at the Advanced Learning Library downtown from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. But if you can't make it, they will be live streamed and they will be uploaded to our YouTube for later viewing. And then the hours at the Angelo and Walters branch just changed effective this Saturday, 3rd. And so the Angelo branch ended up increasing its open hours from 27 to 31 per week. And the Walters branch, which is where I'm based out of, increased from 35 all the way to 40. So we're operating Monday through Thursday, 11 to 7, Friday through Saturday, 11 to 3, and then closed on Sunday. We think that those later hours at night and then the hours added on the weekend will be able to hit a lot of those working parents so we can get more kids coming to the library and involved in our activities. And then they wanted to talk about two big annual programs that we've been doing for quite a bit. The Academy Award Short Film Festival is going to run March 2nd through 9th, and that's going to be at several locations, primarily the full day viewings out of the Advanced Learning Library, but several branches will be having breakouts in live action, animation, and documentary categories. And you can go to our website to learn more about that. And then the Big Read, which is funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, kicks off on March 2nd at the Advanced Learning Library, 2 to 4 p.m. This year we're reading There by Tommy Orange. It's a book about really about Native American generational and intergenerational trauma and how that all works in the Native American culture. And that's mostly what I had. I did want to do an update just kind of on projects that I've been working on at Walters. We've had for the past few years, we've been open, not a lot of programming just because of the staffing issues. But now that I am on full time, they're looking for me to do more adult programming, get more involved in the community, do more partnerships. I've met the past 2 days with Dear Neighbor Ministries, who do hilltop outreach and emergency food assistance, emergency rent assistance, and have been looking at types of programs we can do with them. And we're looking for suggestions too for other organizations within District 3 and within the Wichita community that complement our values and goals or have the same values and goals that we do to work with. So if anybody has any suggestions, or if you know of any community members that are interested in giving us suggestions for a program that will benefit the community, I am working on that angle. You can email me at rdowster@wichita.gov, or go ahead and just give the Walters branch a call and tell them you're looking for Robin. And that's really all I have, unless there's any questions.
Do you know if any of the Black history, do you know much about the individual?
Yeah, I actually have the breakout here, so.
If Atwater is gonna be.
I don't think so. We're doing the next one after the 8th, which is the African American Business Project. We'll do African American journalism. Then the 22nd is Black aviators, and the 29th is Kansas African American trailblazers who shaped our history, just in general. But I don't, as far as I know.
He would probably be in that last one if he was anywhere, it sounds like.
Right, that's kind of one thing, is it's a little bit more general. I know that Jenny Durham at the Advanced Learning Library and Adult Programming is putting them on. So if you were to call the Advanced Learning Library for her, she may be able to get more specifics.
Other questions from the audience? No questions from the public? All right. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Wichita Public Works and Utilities.
Ron Meadows, Chief Design Engineer for the city. I'm gonna run through the list of projects we have that are ongoing, either during construction or during the design phase. I'll do so pretty quickly, so if you have any questions, stop me. Or at the end, if you want to take some notes and have different questions about multiple projects, that's fine too. So projects under construction. Currently, we have the I-135 sanitary sewer relocation, more or less from Pawnee down to Southeast Boulevard. General is the general description of it. Big sewer, portions of it are located underneath I-135 or the shoulder under I-135. So the ramp there in Pawnee and some of that area, it's moving out from underneath there. So access is better. And so if there was a failure, it doesn't take down some of the actual interstate ramps or something like that too. So that project, looking to have a public meeting with the contractor, talk through phasing and some of that type of things with the neighborhood that's involved with that in February. And then construction would start there either at the end of February or beginning of March. Pavement preservation, 2023 program. One thing we have left in District Street is Southeast Boulevard from Harry to Washington is currently in progress. And that's concrete street repair for that section. 2024 program, asphalt overlay. Looks like it's going back to council on February 20th. They bid a project out, and when it came in over the engineer's estimates, they have to go back and get approval. Assuming they have multiple projects coming out same bucket, so they had the money to do it. They're just going to add more money to that project to be able to move forward with it. 47th Street from Hydraulic to Arkansas River is one of the projects in there. Southeast Boulevard from I-135 to Wassell, and then Southeast Boulevard from Hydraulic to Harry. Micro surfacing, there's a map I can provide. I can tell you where to go get it on the city's website if you want. There must be a bunch of them because all it says on my description is CMAP. Preservation seal, George Washington Boulevard from 31st Street to Pawnee, Broadway from 31st Street to John Mack Bridge, McLean Boulevard from Pawnee to Harry, Woodlawn from Lincoln to Warm, and then the residential streets, again, there's a bunch of them, so there's a map. Again, I can show you where to find it. It's under Public Works, under pavement, on the left-hand side of it. There's a couple different interactive maps. The map, I can actually pass around a map if you want to look at it, but unless you know your area pretty well, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to pick it out on the map, so you'd be better to go to an interactive map where you can actually zoom in knowing where you live. Crack seal, again, residential streets, and you can look at the map to figure out exactly where those are at. Brick crosswalks repair, Lincoln and Edgemore. Concrete street repair is George Washington Boulevard from Hillside to Menlo, and Washington from Lincoln to Morris. And some localized repairs at Hydraulic and Tulsa. Watson Park, 2023 playground money. They're going to redo the playground in that park. Looks like we're going to start construction hopefully in the Q1 of 2024. Another thing going on in Watson is looking at putting accessible boat ramp in. That's part of a grant fund. Looks like we're getting bids. Or looks like construction is going to start in February of 2024. So here in the near future. BNR phase 1 is substantially complete, which is some demolition work. Phase 2, or plant 2, package 2. Looks like we're waiting on KDHE concurrence for that. Bids came in on December 15th. There was a group selected. We're waiting on KDHE concurrence for that. Plant 2, package 3. Looks like proposals are due in February, end of February. Patrol East Substation, anticipated construction completion is Q2 of 2024. Mount Vernon from Southeast Boulevard to Oliver. Nothing's really changed. Concept was approved. We're moving forward with the design. As part of that, we also are moving forward with the design of Mount Vernon Hydraulic. When I presented that, I talked about us getting federal HSIP money for that specific intersection. So we're moving We're pulling that out of the overall project. We're gonna do minimal work in there with the maintenance project for the whole section. We're gonna come back and completely reconstruct that interchange, using a decent amount of federal money to be able to use that for the construction portion. Clap. Phase 1A, which was consolidating and fixing the bridges, either due to erosion and or bringing them up to pedestrian standard. We bid it, came in over budget. We are going back out for a bid here in the very near future for that piece. We're gonna bid it a little bit different. We're tweaking some of the designs to try to help out based on some feedback from the contractor on that portion of it. Phase 1B, looks like we're gonna hopefully start construction in March of 24, which is the playground, all-inclusive playground and the dog park. Plainview Rec Center, City Council approved the funding to start the design of that project. So currently what we're doing is putting together an RFP to hire a consultant to start designing that project. One-way streets. So we are converting Main, Topeka, Market, the rest of Emporia, and English from one-way to two-way. We'll be taking that to the DAB hopefully in March. We pre-ordered the signals because those are long lead time items. So we'll hopefully look at bidding something late summer, early fall as far as that project goes to convert those. There isn't much other than the actual conversion. We're not reconstructing the whole road. We're going in and putting signage, pavement markings and signals. That's it. It's not a substantial reconstruction of everything, just to get them converted from one-way to two-way. And roughly the limits of are Murdoch to Kellogg for those sections of it. Dirt streets. The 2023 within this district are built. Pretty good for the most part. We went out and looked at them about a month ago, I think it was, to talk with the consultant and the engineers that designed them and our field staff to see if there's anything that we could do different next time. The 2024, we are currently under design with those. We've reviewed one of them that's already in District 3, which was Clark from Aurora to Ida. There's also Poplar from Pawnee. I don't even know how to describe this. I probably have to show you on a map because it says end of pavement. It's right next to 135 on the east side. And then 35th Street South from Waco to Gold. Again, the first 4 or 5 years, these are all related to streets that are within a block of a school that are currently being treated for dust abatement. So that's where the priority list comes from for the first 4 or 5 years. This is only the second year of the program. So that's why we're doing little pieces here and here and here. It's based on that. Standard. K96 from I-135 to 21st Street. I don't have anything really new to add. It's under design by KDOT. Kellogg from K96 to half mile east of 159th. Again, other projects under design by KDOT. That's all I got. Questions?
Thank you. Mr. Luke?
Okay, go ahead. About Clap, several weeks ago, I noticed 2 police cars pulled into the park in the southwest corner near the creek. I live in a house right across the street. They pulled up pretty close to one of the bigger bridges, and then they got out and walked around, did some things, and got back in and left. I don't know if they were chasing somebody or following up on something. Are any of those bridges capable of handling a automobile vehicle or a truck? I know golf carts and lawnmowers can go over them, but I wondered if they were hindered by the fact that they're dangerous for big vehicles.
I would not feel comfortable. A lot of them have erosion issues underneath them. You know, and they can say, I mean, I wouldn't drive a golf cart across some of them right now. Just because of some of the erosion that's happened underneath them. And some of them we're getting rid of because they're no longer needed because it's not a golf course.
Okay.
So it's a consolidation, it's putting railings on them, it's fixing the erosion issues that we have.
Yeah, it's bad when we haven't had a 10-inch rain lately, but we've had some pretty good ones, but it just caught my curiosity why they stopped there, and I got to thinking, well, maybe the bridges are worse off than we thought.
Well, and I think, I have to go back and look, but I think there's some of them that are only 6 feet wide. You ain't getting a vehicle across.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what, they pulled up one of them that was, it's gotta be about 10 or 12 feet.
There's a couple of them, and I think they used it for maintenance reasons, for that exact reason. They made a couple of them wider, so they can get across the creek in different locations strategically for maintenance of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jerry?
You said it's gonna happen in March, you'll break ground over there,
What's that?
you'll break ground and clap in March,
That's what I have.
right?
That's on the playground portion. The bridges, again, we met, I will say earlier this week, the consultants is wrapping up tweaks to the plans. So we can bid that back out as far as the bridges go.
I think we were told at the last presentation of CLAP that they were gonna be doing that. Try to get the cost down a little bit.
We're making some changes,
Get rid of one, you wouldn't have to repair it, right?
What's that?
If you're gonna get rid of some, you won't have to repair them.
True, you still gotta do some work around there in some way, shape or form. They have footings and stuff associated with them, unless you're gonna leave a footing sticking out of the ground. You gotta at least chop it off to where you would cover it up with something and then probably do some type of erosion control through there so you don't have.
Talk to an artist. Talk to an artist, maybe they can use those footings to put artwork in.
I'm not sure, some of them are probably in the condition you would,
Oh, yeah.
want to, and they're not gonna stick up that. In a
Yeah.
lot of cases, they're gonna be just a little bit above the ground, so it's not something you can really do a whole lot with.
Any other questions from the dad? Questions from the public?
Of course.
Paul?
Is street maintenance up your alley, so to speak?
No,
Well, then we have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so
but
much.
I can take anything you have.
That's the shortest I've ever spoken, by the way.
If you have anything, I can take it back to our maintenance
No,
folks.
I left a voicemail for Gary Hansen last week and I got a call back, so why bother?
Yeah, let's not push it with Paul. Thank you.
Separate issue, by the way.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to our public agenda, and there are no scheduled public agenda items this month. Is there anybody here that wants to speak on any off-agenda items?
Right, no.
Seeing none, we're gonna move on to new business, agenda item number 7, campaign finance ordinance.
Jennifer is not on yet, so she should be here around 7. So I don't, if we want to.
So do we wanna,
move
let Scott go
Scott
next,
go,
so
and
he can
then-
get home to his kids?
Yeah, and then let Jennifer take over after.
All right, Scott, surprise me.
He's only here for you all at all times.
Yep, Scott's gonna get up and talk to us about commercial and utility scale solar.
All right, so I've got a PowerPoint. PowerPoint has 50 slides in it. But my challenge tonight is I'm gonna try and get you through those in about 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm gonna do that in a way that it's gonna be at a pace that you can absorb it. So raise your hand if you got any questions, but this one is primarily, it primarily affects the county. Can everyone see it okay? And is this advancing or?
I'm gonna try again.
No, not yet. Nope.
Or to be on.
You wanna get our attention, you might announce that there's cookies back here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I guess we'll just say next slide and we can just
Sounds
do
good.
that. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this is something that primarily affects the unincorporated county because what we're talking about is essentially what people commonly refer to as solar farms. So properties that are in use for solar panels. And the zoning code is a shared code, so it's a city and a county code. And so as we're going through this process, really at this point, we're saying it's unified. This can affect both the city and the county, so we'll go out to both the DABs and the CABs, but we recognize that it's very unlikely that a large scale solar farm is going to take place in the city. But but we're here to get your feedback and your input and your thoughts on it, because it's going to go to the county commission first, and then it will go to the city council later on. Make sense? Okay, yeah, the cookies. All right, so we're here to review the information. Please provide your comments. Next slide. So a couple of things to talk about here is that Sedgwick County put in place a moratorium, and that's really what kicked off this process. And so the moratorium is in place until March 20th, so we're very quickly approaching that deadline. 6 months seems like a lot of time because it was passed in, I think, September of last year, but it goes very quickly when you're going through a public consultation process. Then the other thing too is that there are no specific solar applications at this time. So we have not received an application. This is really to look at the regulations as they apply to the county and the city overall. The third thing then is that this would be for both the city and the county, and then I can't read the last one. The last one is about, we are talking really about solar farms, so commercial, industrial scale facilities, not the ones that you would put on your house, not the ones that would go as an accessory use to another facility. So think of Mays High School and how they have the solar arrays right next to it. Those are accessory to the principal use, which is a school. So we're not talking about that. Same thing with at the zoo. You may have heard about Integra considering putting some in on their campus. That's accessory. We're talking about ones that are standalone, really solar farm. Next slide. So we'll go through these different topics. We'll touch on all of these. Next slide. So existing conditions. Next slide. So in 2019, folks had the forethought to think, solar is really coming along in other communities, and so we need to be prepared to address that. So in 2019, there were regulations that were put in place both for solar and for wind. Now, there are two components to this. The regulation part is in the zoning code, but the comprehensive plan provides the guidance. Because when a zoning application comes in, we process it and we use the comprehensive plan as our guidance to inform us whether or not what's been applied for meets the community need. So you have guidance and you have regulations. Please keep that in mind. Next slide. So what the zoning code does is it says if you want to put in a large scale solar facility, that it's generally a conditional use. So you would go through the planning process of going through the CABs or the DABs, going to the MAPC, and then ultimately to the governing body, whichever one you're in. There are 20 requirements that go along with this, a very long list, takes up about 2 different pages in the zoning code, and it ranges all the way from you need to do a NEPA style environmental review, to you need to make sure that you take care of airport hazard, glare issues, a whole variety of things. And then in a conditional use, as you are well aware, you always have the ability to add additional conditions and stipulations onto that as well. So formal review process, we talked about that. Next slide. So then what does the comprehensive plan say? Well, the comprehensive plan really highlights, and this is not all the language, that's covered as well on 2 different pages, but it says, it acknowledges that finding appropriate sites could be challenging in Sedgwick County, just given our more urban nature in some areas. Also, that design and performance standards need to be established. Keep in mind that this was in 2019, I think, as they were still kind of working through what the regulation should be in the zoning code. And then the third thing is that it emphasizes protecting the viability of existing cities and their ability to grow. So all of that guidance is in the comprehensive plan right now. Next slide. So our current status, next slide. So this is a very long chart. Planners love charts. Next slide. This is where we are in the process. So we worked our way through the process. We're coming closer to when the moratorium expires and when we want to get it in front of the county commission. Next slide. These are all a bunch of events that are pretty close in sequence. Some of these will fluctuate a little bit, the CABs have, but the very, very important thing I'd like to point out is that on February 7th, we're here today. On February 8th, the MAPC Advanced Plans Committee, that's really the group that we've been working with to say which direction you want to go, what meets the needs of our community. They are meeting tomorrow, and they're going to have a very important meeting where they are going to receive some feedback from the district, from the county commission discussion that took place on Tuesday, and they're gonna consider what the final recommendation to the full MAPC should be. And then the MAPC, the full MAPC meets on February 22nd, and we expect that they will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. Now, there's a couple things that are in between, but you'll notice those are city events. So they will inform the city council, which will come after the county commission. It's a little bit complicated, but we've got two different jurisdictions that we're working with. But the overall thing is that we're taking it to advisory boards. It's gonna go to the planning commission, and ultimately will show up at the county commission and at city council. Make sense? Okay. Next slide. So there's been a lot of public input, a lot of research into this. So we have put a number of different reports up on the website. You can see one here. We had a town hall. I think we had 70 something people sign in. It was over at the Sedgwick County Extension office. But I think we had more than 100 people show up to talk about it. We had an online survey that we did. We've done research on best practices, and then there's a public input report that keeps getting updated almost daily. Now, the reason why is because we keep receiving public comments, and they're very insightful, they're very helpful. And so we're packaging these into one document that at the end of the day, the planning commission will have a document this thick with public comments that they can review. So, and you can see a version of that post online, again, knowing that it's updated quite frequently. Next slide. So in terms of best practices, a lot of communities are, they're wrestling with solar at the same time, and they've developed over time some best practices. We've done research into that. Next slide. Okay, so public input. We talked a little bit about how that's been received in addition to letters, emails, in person, and from elected and appointed officials. Next slide. So we received, I think, over 100 comments here. And again, we just compile it into a report. Next slide. So overall, solar is very broad. There could be a lot of different conditions, a lot of regulations that go with that. So we really were trying to focus on what are the areas that we need to focus on to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the community. So based on the input from the town hall, and based on the input from the survey, these are the areas that really kind of rose to the top. So urban development, growth, decommissioning, groundwater contamination, and then next slide. So we looked at those and we came up with these four. So you can see them: urban development, decommissioning, groundwater, and then setbacks, size, and configuration. Because we really saw that kind of emerging out of this urban growth. So those are four things that the advanced plans has been focusing on. Next slide. So into that process, we said, okay, we've got these themes. We're going to look at what do the existing documents say, what's the public input that we've heard so far, what are the best practices, and what have other communities done. That will show us what the different potential options are for this. Next slide. And again, the options are to make changes. They don't need to, but if there are changes, they've really got the option of doing it in the comprehensive plan, which is guidance, or they can do it in the zoning code, which are the regulations. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so decommissioning, next slide. So we have skipped kind of all the background in terms of what the existing regulations exactly are, what all the input was, and what all the best practices are. That would be probably an hour-long presentation. But where we're going to skip to is where the Advanced Plans Committee, after receiving all of that, has landed so far. And this is general consensus. They've not taken a vote. Again, we're hoping that that'll happen on Thursday, but it may happen a little bit later. So what they're saying is it should be updated to include removal of the solar equipment down to a depth of 3 to 4 feet under the surface. Because as you put the footings in, see those removed eventually. Because solar equipment lasts generally about 25, 35 years, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe more, maybe less, but that's a general time frame. Financial assurances, they want to make sure that there's solid financial assurances so that if the operator goes out of business, or if it should change hands, whatever the case may be, that the equipment is not left there in abandoned, right? Third one is that plans should indicate length of time to complete the decommissioning so that it doesn't languish over time. Yeah, I'm gonna get to it. I'll decommission it, I'll take it out eventually, but when does that clock start? When does it end? And then the fourth one is applicant should provide a statement, the owner operator notify the governing body in advance of the decommissioning. Hey, I'm getting ready and we're done with our project. We're getting ready to take it out, right? Next slide. And then for the comprehensive plan, so those are all zoning code, those are all new regulations. The comp plan, no changes recommended. Next slide. Okay, so now we're moving on. We've talked about decommissioning. Were there any comments or thoughts on decommissioning? I guess I'm gonna stop and pause there. I find it's easier to talk about this, we break it up into different sections. Okay.
Any questions?
It's okay, you don't have to, we can always come back later, okay? All right, next one. So, contamination and water quality, this was something that's been raised quite a bit at the open house. And so, number one, requesting testing pre and before the project, after the project, and during the duration of the project. And the reason why is because there's been concerns expressed about what if something in the solar panels or something in the metal, the galvanized steel, or whatever it is, should leak into the soil and the groundwater and contaminate the groundwater, and we've got folks living with wells out in these areas. So the testing also would protect the company that's doing it, because arsenic, and sometimes these things occur naturally, maybe it's from a prior use that occurred near the property, can cause things to be elevated. So it's both insurance for the people who live there and for the company that's proposing to do the project. And then the second one is that the materials, a list of materials will be provided so that staff can review those as part of the application, not planning staff, thank goodness, but people who are experts at environmental health and materials, and they can flag anything that they see is not appropriate or a concern, and the governing body has the ability to say, no, you're not gonna put that in, we want you to find a substitute. Make sense? Okay. Question? Yes.
Yes. On the testing.
Yeah.
What about after it would be built?
Yes, actually, it's that periodic, so before it got constructed, periodic, so that it would be as the project is going on, so that you catch something before it's a major problem. Great question.
But after, in the 25 years it's constructed.
Yes, and then the post would
Okay.
be after they're done with the project.
And how long, how many times is that gonna be, every 90 days or?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know for sure. We don't have that written down. So, good question.
It looks to me like the post-construction soil and groundwater testing would only be after a removal.
No, it's intended to be prior to the project, during the project, at intervals, and then at the end. After they-
It could be one time at the end, and then
Yeah.
again within 90 days of substantial removal of any portion of the system. So if they later came in 2 years later, tore up a bunch of it, you'd want to go in and make sure that nothing was leached or nothing.
The intent is that when they construct a project, before they even break ground, do anything with the ground, they're testing. So we know what the starting point is. Then they put the equipment in the ground and they test again, and then they continue to test every so often as the project is going. And then at the end of the project, they decommission it, they pull everything out, and they test it again to make sure that there's nothing left.
But it should have some testing,
So- Frequency interval.
yes, just like you have to get your sprinkler systems tested yearly.
Because then you have some, you're holding people's feet to the fire, because we tend not to do too much of that in the
Accountability.
city, right?
Mhm.
Going back and checking on stuff.
And then also, it's agreed upon, right? People know what they're getting into both
Yes.
at the beginning and.
It's very clear, yes.
Good, thank you. Okay, and then, okay, we talked about the construction materials. Everyone ready to go on to the next one? Okay, so, no recommended changes for the comprehensive plan. Next slide. Urban development. Okay, this has been an area of quite a bit of discussion. So there are two maps that we're gonna show you. One is the urban growth areas. This is the anticipated and estimated growth areas for the communities in Sedgwick County by the year 2035. And it's made up of both their aspirations, but also an evaluation to say, is that really reasonable? And at the end of the day, the planning commission votes to recommend approval of it, and then ultimately the governing body. And so you can see, for some, it's a mile out, maybe 2 miles, and for some, it's quite small, right? So, which, that's a whole different conversation in and of itself. But these have come up for a number of reasons. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of urban growth areas, oh, I'm sorry, I was ahead. I described what it is, but here it is in text. Next slide. So then we have a second map, and this is the areas of influence, which is in the zoning code. So one is in the comprehensive plan, and one is in the zoning code. The one in the zoning code matches it, But you'll notice like Viola doesn't have one, you'll notice Eastboro nor the city of Wichita have one. That's unique because in these areas, if a case happens inside one of the zoning areas of influence, then the planning department sends a notification to their planning commission, hey, there's a case in your area, do you want to hear it? They say yes or they say no. If they say yes, then they get to weigh in on whether it should be approved or whether it should be denied. And if they say denial, then it takes the county commission a supermajority of 4 out of 5 votes in order to approve the zone change. Make sense? Okay. So that would apply also in a conditional use case. So a solar farm would go through that process. Next slide. And this is a description about how that all works. So 4 out of 5 votes. That's important because there have been some communities engaged in this discussion who have said, we want you to eliminate the ability for solar farms to happen within our urban growth area or within our urban area of influence, both the same. So that's been a case in point or discussion for the MAPC advanced plans. Next slide. So there's been discussion also about, well, what if we expanded it? We said, don't do it within 3 miles of the growth areas. Next slide. There's also been discussion, well, what if we did 1 mile outside of it? It's just a very in-depth conversation. Next slide. So at this point, MAPC advanced plans is recommending no changes to the process. They've said, look, we've got a process in place. Let's stick with that. We feel like that meets the community needs. Next slide. Okay, and these are the reasons why. Because there's flexibility in the process, because there's lots of opportunity for the communities to get engaged. Next slide. In terms of the comprehensive plan, no changes recommended for that. Next slide. And if you'll remember, the comprehensive plan has a lot to say about guidance and protecting viability of growth for cities already. So, next slide. Okay, size and configuration. So with this one, the advanced plan said, look, really, we don't think there's any change needed because, we'll go next slide. I think it says because in the conditional use process, you can add additional conditions. Next slide. Same thing, no changes to the comp plan. Next slide. Size and configuration, size limit. Next slide. Advanced plan says no changes to zoning code so far. Again, just consensus. They haven't taken a vote on it. Next slide. And they say, look, again, the conditional use process is flexible. If an application comes in and you don't think that it should be too large, a certain size, you can establish what that size should be. Next slide. Same thing with comprehensive plan. They said no changes needed there. Next slide. Height. So the height of the facilities. So this is a best practice slide. What we found is that really they're indicating no more than 20 feet would normally be necessary. Next slide. The Advanced Plans Committee is recommending that the height limit be set at 25 feet. It's currently 35 feet, so a reduction of 10 feet. Next slide. And this is based on just looking at other communities and the practices. And then also because in the conditional use process, they have the ability to raise it if they want through that process. Next slide. And no changes to the comp plan. Next slide. And then a number of other additional topics that we don't cover as in depth. There was a conversation about should we categorize solar projects differently between large and small? Because you can have one that's 1,000 acres, you can have one that's 20 acres. There can be a big difference should they have to follow the same amount of regulations and requirements. At this point, the conversation, I think where Advanced Plans has landed so far is just, hey, it's complex enough. Let's let it be with where it is today, and maybe we'll visit that topic later on. But right now, no changes. Fire protection has been another one that's come up. The county is very sensitive to this topic, I think, because of the fire district and the funding sources for the fire district and the financial constraints. So some of the comments that we've received just recently, as in yesterday, was ensuring that the solar projects do not create a financial liability for the county. So those are comments that have been received. We've also looked at the design and where they laid out, where does the battery storage go? And one of the recommendations from Advanced Plans is to ensure that the fire department can view it, comment on it. Next slide. So we went to Sedgwick County Association of Cities, which is a group of all the cities in Sedgwick County get together, they host a meeting, and so we were able to give a presentation. Next slide. And there were a number of comments, yes, there were a number of comments that we received on it. And some of them were, ranged from, there should be limits in size of the solar facilities and then areas of influence, setbacks, and separation between the projects. So we received a number of different comments on this. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so again, here's where we are in the process. We're gearing up for MAPC and then the county commission and city council later on. Next slide. Yep, and that's where I'm gonna stop. Any questions? Did I make 10 minutes or was I like, I was probably. I know, I tried.
I think you did 6 and a half.
Are the rules and regulations for wind farms is detailed and
Great question. Well, in the comprehensive, this is one where the comprehensive plan really informs the zoning code. In the comprehensive plan, there's a discussion, you can read it, there's text indicating that the viability of our aircraft manufacturers and the number of airports are paramount in our community. And so for that reason, because of the incompatibility of that sector with wind turbines at a large scale, they are banned in our community, so they're not allowed per the zone.
okay, thank you.
A small number, like 10% of the county would be eligible.
I think,
Like FAA guidelines.
yeah, I think, I wasn't involved in that process, but I think there was a map that was developed that showed, if you did a buffer around our airports, there was a minimal amount of land left in the county that would be available.
Other questions from the dam?
All right, thank you all.
Wait, questions from the audience? From the public?
So the wind turbine at Hartman Arena, that from what I understand has never been functional, is out of your area of expertise.
Well, that one gets back to the accessory use, also accessory versus principal use. And in that case, it would be accessory use. The other thing too is I'm not sure, Hartman Arena, I guess I should know, but I'm not sure if it's in an unincorporated county or if it's in one of the cities up there. So the outside of the
Now,
They've
didn't they?
taken it down, haven't they?
What's that?
They've taken it down. haven't
Well, I understood it never functioned, so they probably
they?
did.
Yeah, they had problems. I think.
Thank you.
Why do you see the protections from solar farms?
Well, some of the comments, and I don't want to speak too much for them, but I want to give you a sense of where I think their perspective is from. Is they are looking at their urban growth areas where they're looking at providing sewer and water infrastructure, and then they're also looking at, where transportation improvements, those kind of things, where those are gonna go. I think they use this map to kind of inform that, and so I think they're concerned about if a solar project goes in, does it change their projections and where they.
Because we heard similar arguments with cell towers. I think at the last meeting and the one before, and it was a similar thing.
Cell towers happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Keep up the great work.
thanks.
Easy, huh? Easy.
Easy.
It's not what you hear with those dad most of the time.
I appreciate it though, and you all are always engaged, you always ask questions, you're involved, and so I very much appreciate it.
Are you presenting that at Advanced Plans tomorrow?
I think Justin will.
Okay, yeah, we'll just see if Justin can go that fast.
I'm sure he could, I'm sure he can.
I'm just teasing. All right, we're gonna back up to agenda item number 7, and we have Jennifer Magana on the Zoom, and Jennifer, I think you're up.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So Becca's going to run the slides, and I appreciate that so much. This item today is for your input and feedback to the City Council. Campaign, next slide, please. Thanks. The item is regarding the city's regulation of campaign finance. The city has some authority to regulate campaign finance over and above what the state does. The question that has come before the council is whether or not the city council should limit the donations or contributions from LLCs and corporations for candidates in city council elections, or allow them but make them subject to a type of disclosure by at least a a corporate officer of those groups. On January 16th at the city council meeting, this was discussed briefly and the council voted to send this issue to the DABs. And so we are here at DAB 3 tonight to talk about it and get your feedback and we'll just move on with that. So next slide, please. So just next slide, please. We'll go. There are just a couple terms we use here in this world of campaign finance, and legally they have some different meanings. So one is contributions, one is expenditures. What we're talking about in this ordinance is contributions to candidates by donors. Expenditures is something different, but it was addressed in Citizens United. Next slide, please. So generally, the state regulates these, but there are also federal regulations. State law does have to follow certain constitutional rules like First Amendment. Next slide, please. The one question is whether Citizens United prohibits cities from regulating these. There is some flexibility. Citizens United did regulate expenditures. It did not prohibit regulation of contributions. So we have some gray area in that, but we think that this is an area that the city has some authority to regulate. Next item, please. Next slide, please. So the question is, well, backing up, this currently, and for years, the city has capped the contribution following state law, caps contributions at a dollar amount of $500 per primary and per general election. The state law does not limit who may make a contribution. Definition of person includes corporation LLCs as well as other entities. Entities are not required to disclose who is making that donation from the LLC by naming a person. Next slide, please. And under city's authority, we can, as a city, be more stringent or more restrictive than state law. We just cannot conflict with state law. Historically, the city has regulated city campaign candidates, city candidates in some fashion. From 2015 to January 2nd, the city did not restrict campaign contributions. It did require a level of reporting to the city clerk beyond what the state law required. Next slide, please. And then January 2nd, we'll go ahead and go next slide, please. January 2nd, city code was amended to prohibit contributions in city council races from corporations and LLCs. And we also at that time made what we'd call a technical amendment to just make the penalty language align with state law for the definition of misdemeanors. It was more of just a technical correction, but we did it at that time. So that is the current city code. There is a restriction on contributions from LLCs and corporations to city candidates. Next slide, please. On January 16th, the city council took this up again, and there was a discussion on whether to repeal that limitation on contributions from LLCs and corporations. There was also a discussion of if that was repealed, would there be an opportunity for a disclosure requirement on candidates to name or to identify a corporate officer or managing member, managing partner of an LLC or corporation. And that would be filed by the city, by the candidates with the city in their campaign finance reports. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the issue for your discussion and feedback is to discuss the amendment to the code and the potential change back to the no limitation on contributions, but with a disclosure requirement for a managing partner or responsible officer for contributions in city council elections. This item is scheduled to come back to city council on Tuesday, March the 5th. And that is the end of my presentation. I will happily turn it over to you for your discussion input, and I will be available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
All right, Deb, what do you got to say?
Want your money now or no?
Don't let us keep it fair.
So I'll just express what my concern is, that with the way it was before all of this happened, is that if somebody owns, and I'm not gonna name any names, I'm gonna be good, I'm not gonna name names. If somebody owns multiple LLCs, let's say they own 15 LLCs, each of those LLCs can give $500, even if they're owned by one person. Each of those LLCs can give a max of $500, so they're no longer maxing out at $500, now they're maxing at 500 times 15.
No,
Thank you for the math, Mike. So that's my concern, is that we not go back to just allowing 15 LLCs to give $500 apiece to the.
would you allow it if they required the actual owner of the LLC to be identified?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that would make it better that they were actually identified, so somebody could see that
They're trying to buy an election.
But they're still 15 times 500.
it is still 15 times 500, and so
Well, everybody wants open.
it would be. That's right.
15 times, you would not know it's me.
That's right, I
But
wouldn't,
now,
you just
if it
know.
passes, you would know it's me constantly.
That's right.
constantly, And you can do something about it, so I think it's beneficial to know who it is, instead of wondering and doing your own research that takes, I don't know, it's years. I
Yes,
mean, you can just kind of search an LLC and be like, who's the owner, without doing digging.
right, yeah,
And
it's
this
not,
is how it being
If you own 15 LLCs, you don't really care if people know who you are.
No, but I know, but it's easier to be more transparent and be more like, cause I just spoke on this at the city. And I think it's more transparent to know who they are. I mean, yeah, you don't know who they are, but isn't it nice to know instead of doing your own digging, if you put out there?
well, yeah, I think at a minimum, we should at least know, you know, who's authorizing that, or who the owner is, or whatever, who's donating X amount of dollars.
But there's still the potential for somebody that owns a lot of LLCs to buy an election. I mean, so, you know, I mean, I'm all for transparency, but I also think, personally, I think there should be limitations.
Combined.
Yeah.
Disclosure.
With LLCs, you have to have multiple LLCs to run your company. You can't have just one LLC to run the entire 6 companies that you have. You have to have different LLCs under that company to run the company.
I think the question is just whether, because you have those LLCs, should that essentially enable you to skirt campaign finance laws that otherwise apply to individual contributors? Like, just because you're a salaried employee somewhere, even if you had the $7,500, you know, you can't contribute that much to your candidate of choice, but somebody else, you know, I think that's kind of the issue. Yeah.
What's keeping somebody that owns that many LLCs from taking any employee of one of them and say, I'd like to make $100?
That's right.
Because
That
that's
is-
illegal.
Yeah, I know, but.
Yes.
That is illegal. George Steinbrenner actually got kicked out of baseball for 2 years for doing that back in the 70s with Nixon's campaign.
And it happens a lot, but if you get caught, you're in trouble. Yeah.
Is there any way really to regulate any of this stuff? Is there any way? I mean, law becomes just, the laws that we have in the books, to me anyway, today, are nothing more than the expression of our moral and ethical state at this particular point in history. And we have very little enforcement, we have very little compliance with any of our laws. Even the most heinous things are done to all sorts of people, even though there are laws on the books.
So what's the solution? Just.
No, I'm not saying you should do it up, but
Well, okay, in number 11, city finance, they are asking that the police, the managing partner or responsible officer be identified. Is that correct? That's where I read it. That's what they want to change. So that's at least a step in the direction we're talking about, right?
But it doesn't keep them from making multiple contributions.
What keeps
No, I
them
don't
from,
think that's
they have
solvable.
15
That part's not
LLCs.
solvable.
What keeps them from giving themselves a bonus from all of them and putting it all in their pocket and then contributing it?
Because that's illegal.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you.
Okay.
But I mean, all that stuff happens.
I'm the managing partner or I'm the owner of an LLC. and I have 15 of them. Well, I just go tell my payroll person, it's been approved by the board to give me $500 grossed up bonus. Then I take all that money, put it in one check and send it to them in my name.
You can't do
Yeah,
that.
you have to send it
Can't.
to different
Yeah,
LLCs.
you'd have to do it through the money would
Yeah,
have to
through the
come from
LLC.
the LLCs.
Well, I originally did it, but it became as a paycheck to me, as a bonus.
Yeah, but as an individual, you can only give $500.
500 max.
Okay, that's where my
No,
question
no
was.
less.
Yeah.
Less.
Okay.
And I think the other thing is, I mean, we were at a point where people could just do that, and then that was, the right was vote to do that, that was voted by city council, not to allow that anymore. And now we're actually stepping backwards, because now we're back to where people can do that. They can just give through their 15 LLCs because that, and
But
you
they
know,
would have to identify themselves.
but with this, yeah, they would at least have to identify themselves, but we still moved forward, and then we took a step backward in my opinion.
Allow 15 plus identifiers.
And, yeah, I mean, but I think it's better than going all the way backwards, I guess.
So is that the issue, Mike, that's going to be before the council is it's kind of two parts? You know, keep the amendment that was passed in January, so then there's the prohibition on the LLCs, you know.
The item that we're talking about here would undo that. So
Right.
go back to the old way,
Right.
but then it would have manager of the LLCs. Also, one other point I'd like to throw in. We've been paying careful attention to Citizens United. That's the genesis of them taking it off in 2015. That's when Citizens United came out. Sole
was actually
proprietorship.
2010.
Go ahead.
Oh, it came out in 2010. Sorry.
But the concerns is, from what I understand from 2015, the concerns around some of the rulings is what led them to look at this. Is that accurate, Jennifer?
That is correct. That is correct. We do believe that after watching the cases and looking at federal election regulation, there is authority to take the step that was taken January 2nd.
Okay, and according to Citizens United, though, certain types of businesses are granted the ability, it's sole proprietorships and partnerships, which I believe you can only have one of. So I think that was maybe the genesis of those being protected by Citizens United. So those aren't covered in this. We are not able to regulate those. I just want to bring that up as well. LLCs, particular types of businesses are the ones that you see commonly have to have multiple LLCs. Developers, a lot of people that have to have LLCs to kind of fall back on for insurance reasons and whatnot. So I think tow or bail companies, bail bondsmen also have to have multiple LLCs. So it's a very particular type of businesses that have to have multiple LLCs set up.
I think at minimum, we should at least require the report of whoever it is within that organization. I think that's the minimum that we should do. And I don't think most people go out and pull campaign finance reports to find out, even if it's on there. I just don't think most people go out and, I mean, I don't know if most people even know how to pull a campaign finance.
That's what you have watch groups for.
Pardon me?
Yeah. That's what you have watch groups for.
The Beacon does.
You just gotta find out whether they're telling the truth of what they found.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole nother
Yeah.
topic, because I don't know if a lot of people even really explore the candidates that they're voting for. They heard this name the most, and that's who I'm gonna vote for. So.
And Spirit notified their employees that they could voluntarily donate $1 towards elections, and they collect $5,000. How do they disperse it?
I mean, they could do it through a PAC.
Yeah.
PACs are still, that was the main crux of Citizens United was,
Because there used to be a check mark on your.
Income tax.
on your income tax, if you wanted to donate a certain amount of money, $5, $2, whatever it was.
Public financing of
Yeah.
elections.
But that went into a general fund that was dispersed evenly with everybody campaigning, and I don't know exactly.
I think you have to opt into that, and I think that might be federal. I'm not aware of that on the city level or state level.
Well, I agree with Cindy. I don't think you can limit it, but we ought to at least know who's doing it.
I personally would like to see it limited. I don't think corporations should have any benefit over a human being that occupies a place on this planet. I think we ought to overturn Citizen United. And no, I don't think they need this to have one more shell. We're just looking underneath one more shell. I don't think
Are we
that-
doing a straw poll here, Jennifer, or is this just comment?
Just comments.
Yeah, this does not require a vote or consensus. It's feedback for your information to bring back to the discussion, March 5th.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the legality of outside state funds being donated to an election for a candidate?
I'm not an expert on campaign finance law, but I don't think there's any restriction on that. And PACs are, something that can enjoy a lot of protection. They're different, regulated different than corporations. I think there's a lot of flexibility under the law.
Okay. Well, I mean, my only thought process is, I know there's a lot of out-of-state money that comes in, and it'd be interesting to find out, one, why is somebody from, let's say, New Mexico donating to a local, Wichita and or county election? And what is their agenda, right? Because I think if you're looking at a county and or a city election, that should be coming from the citizens of the county and or city, and it should be influenced by New Mexico or Nebraska.
Yeah, I think there's protections for that type of contribution from across state lines. I don't believe that that's something that's been regulated, but I will follow up on that.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments by the DAB?
I think it should stand. It's the way it was on January 2nd. I don't think it needs to go backwards. I think we need to progress forward.
Well, we went backwards when it reverted back to where it went on January 2nd. We went backwards because we had moved forward where it was that could no longer be allowed for all the 15 LLCs to donate. And
This one hasn't been voted on yet. This will be the beginning of March.
Second, when it did go.
Yeah, so we're currently banned.
Number 10.
LLCs are.
oh, we
current-
are still banned. I thought that was overturned.
No, during that meeting, we deferred to DABs to go out and get public feedback.
So the question then here is not just whether or not they should be identified, it's whether or not we should actually go back to this at all.
Yes, yes. And if we go back, we did pass as an amendment to repealing what happened on the second. The amendment that we identified. So it'll be a little bit better, depending on your perspective. It'll be a little bit better than what we had previous to January 2nd. But if that's your opinion, it's still going back to essentially the way it was, except now we identify and know. It makes it a little easier for us to identify the people who get it.
Well, can we not identify and limit? Okay, that would be my.
Well, I don't think there's even a need to identify if we do limit. If we keep it the way it is, there's no reason to identify because the LLCs won't be able to get it.
They'll only be able to give $500 each.
Or the individuals.
And the individuals, yeah.
Yeah, I personally, I'm all for as much disclosure as we can possibly get. I still think it's, it's probably pretty suspicious sometimes, but I would like to see it regulated as much as we can. Limit the amount that they can contribute and also have to identify where it comes from. I think that's fair.
If we lower the amount, are we in compliance with state and federal laws?
We can
We can't
limit,
raise it, but we can lower it.
we can limit the amount. That was one of, like I said, Jennifer, I was the biggest bug for the last year or so, going back and forth with her. One of the models we were looking at was limiting it to like $50. So LLCs could only get $50 a company instead of 500. So that was something we looked at as well. I can't remember if there was any concern with legality around that one. I don't believe there was, but that was one that we had looked at as well.
I could just see somebody scrambling out there trying to set up all these LLCs. Oh, I gotta set up 100 LLCs so I can get $50.
Well, it cost him a lot more than $50 to go set up an LLC.
That's what I was wondering. I thought you could get,
I think it's 85 for an LLC.
oh, that'd be,
Is that 100? Let's see.
that would be critical.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the extent we're here for feedback, I mean, I would, be in line with, I would like to keep things as they are, not repeal what was voted on January 2nd. I think it just, keeps everything on an even keel. Everybody, everybody gets one vote, everybody gets their single set of $500 primary cycle, and then again in the general. And, they do have the opportunity to give to a political action committee, if they wanna donate more, and there's no limitation on businesses there, and that spending is certainly still influential.
Mr. Luke?
Yeah, okay, if we keep it at $500 and we make them identify at least a partner or a business manager, and they make the contribution, it's not published in a paper, it's like when they say who had the most donations, all they do is give the top figure. Somebody would still have to go to the records,
Yes.
whether it be federal, state, or city, and ask for those records and find out who made all the contributions.
Yeah,
You can find
but
it
it would be
online.
public, it would
And
be
it's
public
it's like we said
information.
earlier, there are not many people even in this room here.
Well, but if
It's gotta be
one
made
person,
available.
yeah, if one person takes the time to do it and gets it out to whomever they want it distributed to.
That's the process now. It is recorded. You just have to know where to go to find out.
That's right. And I didn't learn that until I ran for office. I didn't know how to find campaign finance.
And just for clarification too, there's a couple of different dates that you have to turn it in up to that point, what you had raised. So like
Yes.
end of July is the first filing deadline. End of October is the second, just a few days before. And then if you have anything in between that and like 2 days before the election, any major donations, you have to put it out as well. So it's not like a live feed where you see the money coming in and the very next day it's posted. It's at the periodic points that you have to file during a campaign season.
Well, I would suggest we advance it to where at least where they're identified. That would be my recommendation. 500 doesn't bother me. I think we ought to know where it's coming from and who signed the check.
But you're okay with one person having 15 LLCs and contributing $500 from each, as long as they identify themselves?
Is that one, but if an LLC is a subsidiary of a company, there's gonna be a manager, a general manager, a vice president, and that's the person that has to authorize the $500, not the person that owns the LLC.
Well, but if a person owns 15 LLCs, he can give $500 from each LLC.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought he had to go through whoever was running the business.
No, that's just to identify on the finance.
So I have 3 LLCs. I could give my $500 from each of my
Right.
LLCs.
Let's talk after.
You just opened your $1,500 bank account.
Okay. Paul, did you?
Well, I mean, this is totally off the wall, but by virtue of attrition over nearly 35 years, I became the only shareholder in a corporation and an LLC, which had previously been a limited partnership, but with only one partner, I had to change that. And, anything I ever did in way of political contributions was completely separate. It was me. I even had one person that I contributed a lousy $100 to that turned it back and said that they didn't take donations from businesses.
You didn't give me $100.
I didn't ask. And and the other thing was I was really, really careful, and nobody else does this. I'm sure I'm the only one. I was really careful, but I think $100 is probably the most I ever gave anybody. And I really didn't want to get in a, you know, like when I'm on a DAB or the dealer review board, debating dealers and stuff. I didn't really want to be put in the position where I gave 100 to the loser and then the winner comes around and says, well, I see you donated to my competitor. And, you know, I kind of tried to stay really neutral there, but back to my point, I know this is never going to happen. But, you know, if the job pays $50,000 a year, I think y'all limit contributions to $1 million, say. Because there's plenty of people out there with good education, good thoughts, good intentions and everything else that there's no way in the world that they can compete for the finances that the guy or girl that's going to win gets. And I really think there ought to be a multiplier limit to the amount of contributions can be made for someone running to office. If the job only pays $20,000 a year, why in the world would you need more than, you know, 500,000? You can only buy so many mailers and signs and stuff. It just doesn't seem like a fair fight the way it is. I'm done. Was that 3 minutes?
I think it was 2.5. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, I'm good.
Because at this point, the candidate can accumulate as much as they want to
Yes.
in donations.
No limit.
Yeah, I agree. Only time in life I've agreed with Paul.
Well, let's see. I'm gonna call her out. I think it's the only time, but thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for your feedback. Jennifer, thank you for, if you don't need anything else, you know, else from us, thank you for talking to us about this.
Thank you for the good discussion. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to agenda item number 9, updates, issues, and reports.
All right, I appreciate everybody being here again tonight. Aside from campaign finance, there's not been a whole lot that's gone on council the past month or so. This is the time that we start the budget discussions. We've already had one budget town hall. I think we have another one coming up in March, maybe.
They have not told the CFRs, so
Okay.
great idea.
But we started last year to where we want more dialogue with the public about the budget. So we're going to continue that this year. I think we're actually going to have more town halls this year than last year. Please come out, let your opinions be known on it. This next year, we're going to be okay, but the year after, we are facing around a $10 million budget shortfall. We've been putting money in reserves over the last couple of years, so we're going to cushion it. We're actually in pretty decent shape compared to a lot of other places. With just some of our forward thinking and strategies, there's a lot of municipalities that are going to be in a lot more dire shape, including USD 259. ARPA runs out, so that's what's going to be the fiscal cliff there. So regardless of that, there are going to be some hard decisions that we're going to have to make, and we're going to have to make them as a community. So we need input, we need people to talk about the things that are important to them now, what they want to see the city continue doing, what is important. We did raise salaries for WPD, we did raise salaries for fire. We are currently in talks with SEIU about some pay adjustments and some things with SEIU and city workers, which I support too, because we need to make sure that they are paid a living wage. One of the reasons we've had some issues here lately is employment shortfalls, because we just don't have enough in the position. It's great news to hear 35 people in the new police recruitment class. That's picking up. This time last year, I think we had 9. So it's good that we're picking up. I think pay has a lot to do with it. I also think having a steady police chief in, because in 2022, we went through 4 different police chiefs, and that is real tough on recruiting. So it's good news to hear that. Again, just be aware of the town halls. We did send an email out, I believe, on the first one. So just pay attention to that and please come out and dialogue. And this will be a place too that we're gonna be talking about some budget issues as well. One thing that we did pass recently, yesterday actually, is, we have, social workers that we're going to send out with the hot team specifically to deal with people who are going through addiction crises. We also, in that RFP, put out for, someplace that we can take them to for treatment, open beds that we can immediately take people to, because when people are ready to go to treatment, we need to be ready. Unfortunately, nobody applied to that RFP. Again, the city, there's like just a shortage of beds around the city right now. We are working on that as well. I think I've talked about it before. The opioid settlement funds that we are getting from the big pharmaceutical companies. We've actually reached out and we are collaborating with our county counterparts. And we have a study right now that's going on and are identifying gaps. And I talk about this all the time. One thing I want to see is treatment for people who don't have insurance. Because I think that is a big gap that we have right now. And if we want to stop contributing to the homeless population, to the numbers, that's one of the areas we do have to focus on. So that report will be back in the fall, and over 13 years, we have $15 million combined with county to spend. When we were up in Topeka recently lobbying on behalf of the city, I made sure to talk with some of the members of the judicial committee, who the state has about $135 million that they are receiving from that over the same amount of time. So is there any way that we can collaborate on this? Is there any way, if we identify good, worthy causes, we can tap into that funding? Some promising conversations with some legislators there. So hopefully the state can come on and help support a lot of the things that we identify and the needs that we identify coming up in the fall. So there's work on that as well, but the social worker will be going out with the hot team, identifying individuals, giving every opportunity we can to people to come in from the cold, to come back in and get back on their feet. So I did want to mention that. I know this is a concern with a lot of members on our DAB as well.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So all these ARPA funds, because I know that some funds were awarded but not spent. And I keep hearing of different organizations that are then getting these ARPA funds to spend by a certain time. What is the process for them to get some of those funds? Is there a process? Because, I know one organization that was allocated some funds after really messing up a previous organization that this person ran and kind of running it to the ground, and then the city's giving them a whole bunch of money, ARPA money. And I was dumbfounded about that.
I couldn't tell you for sure. I'll look into that.
Okay,
I know we
look into it, let me know, because then I can, I can communicate that to organizations that I work with or I'm familiar with. Whatever, because I know both the state and others have ARPA funds that have to be spent within a particular time, but I don't think the word is getting out overall that organizations can go through a particular process and still get access to these funds. I don't, with all the work that I do, I have no idea how.
Okay, I'll check into that. I know it's limited what we have left. We did identify 3 major projects, including the fire stations, finding the land for the new fire stations. So there's a limited amount left, but I will check on that.
Okay, thank you.
I spoke last time about the zoning case on Santa Fe. I sent an email out earlier, just to give you guys an update. I did approve it yesterday, and it passed. I did put a protective overlay, limiting it to 4 units. This is the church on South Santa Fe. It's literally the church. They're remodeling the inside of the church. They added 2 new parking spaces, so it does comply with our parking standards. And, but again, I did put that limit on there because they're wanting to do 4 units inside the church. So if they come back later and they want to add on to it, they will have to go through this process again, and then we can hear what their plans are for this. So
maybe they can show up this time.
Yes,
That's very important.
No, I hear you.
And remind me how many square feet that is? It's only like a 1,200 square foot.
Well, it is a
Very
part of a
small.
larger parcel. But when they rezoned, they took a part of it out.
No, I'm talking about the church itself.
Oh,
It's only like 12 or 15 or 1,400. I mean, these gotta be tiny, tiny, tiny units.
They wanted to build up on it or something, did they build it taller?
No, they don't
No,
want
no,
it. It's
they
just within, it's just within there. They do have 2 units in there currently, and then they have space, so it's the other half of the church is what they're wanting. And maybe it is, maybe it's just studio apartments.
Yeah.
You gotta go down in that area and it's like all duplexes down, like that whole neighborhood is duplexes, so given the context,
Right.
it's kind of in the character of the neighborhood. It's already.
Yeah, and with our housing crunch, that's also something we have to be, cognizant of. We don't wanna.
We can express concern about the housing crunch, but we also have to hold people's feet to the fire and build an actual affordable housing and to make rents accessible.
Yeah, we did.
That's where the morality of this is. We
Yeah,
have to
if we-
start holding people accountable and not have councilmen coming up and expressing regret over the housing fund. No, we need to hold these guys accountable for building what they say they're gonna build.
Yeah, we are looking at that. We were looking at, doing a lot of our economic incentives, basing that around affordable housing. We went and there are state guidelines that do not allow us to do that. So again, it's another one where the state kind of throws a wrench in any of our plans of kind of being effective with this, but we are looking at, we passed yesterday, 2 items actually, an IRB, 2 IRBs, I believe, that are tied to affordable housing. So, one of them is on South Broadway. It's technically in District 4, but it's right across the street from District 5, right off of Broadway, senior living center. And the number of units on there are tied to, affordable housing. So they will have units for $700, $500, and $400 for seniors to move into. And there's another one that just passed in East Wichita, an apartment complex, again, tied to affordable housing. So we're letting people know that if you want to build actual affordable housing that people can afford, more than willing to work. Yes.
Are these being developed by nonprofits or community CDCs or?
No, both of them are being developed by developers. It's within their 8% profit margin, but then they will sell it off. But these requirements will go with it, so sell it off the property. The last thing, Cindy, you brought it up earlier about the youth violence. We are talking, we had a meeting last week with the God Squad, or the remnants of the God Squad. They're a group of individuals within our community, mostly faith-based. A lot of them are ex-felons who have gone through the system and kind of understand the pitfalls of life, and they want to reach out to these kids. Really impressive group. We're looking at another model that is based off of something that's going pretty well in Omaha. So I'm digging a little more into this as well to understand it, because it's partially city-led, but then also partially community-led, which the government can do things all day long, but unless you really have the community coming along aside and even taking the lead on it, it's not really worth its salt. So we're looking at this model. Troy Anderson, who is our assistant city manager, he's from Omaha. That's where he worked previously. So he's working with WPD, and it's getting people in contact with a lot of the youth. One of the things that we are finding is a barrier is getting them into schools, USD 259. There's some conflict there, but it has to do with legality, giving kids information up. So there's a lot of issues like that as far as identifying and being able to contact at-risk youth. So we're trying to work through that as well. It looks like we're going to get a working group going and looking at this model a little further. Our mayor is a big proponent of this. So
Can you please let me know, because Urban League's looking at what we can do and how we need to bring the community together. You know, we had a shooting in our building.
Yeah.
We took 6 bullets in our building last week, and I mean, it's a lot of the youth that are being impacted are either young Black or young Hispanic kids, youth, and that's our target. You know, we have to do something different. So I'd love to get any updates on what
make sure you're
have
included.
engaged in. Thank you.
And And also the other half of the violence that we see is a lot of it is domestic violence related.
Yes.
So we're looking at making sure that we get into there with some violence interrupter program. We're not violence interrupter, it's batterers intervention programs. So we're really looking at that, how we can do that, how we can make sure that people go through, because they can currently get ordered to go through batterers intervention programs, but they don't necessarily complete it. Some of it is affordability, because it's $50 a class and you have to go through 26 weeks of this. So we're looking at ways that we can help with that. Also, just a lot of people just, oh, I'll go to jail instead of going to these programs. So we are looking at that with our legal department and some things we can do around that, because that's the other half of it, aside from youth violence. Like,
Yeah, different subject, there was a lot of talk when you remodeled that building at North 21st about the being far away from the city and the homeless. How was the attendance in this winter? Did you have any figures on whether you got the building filled up or the people?
it was just about full at this latest Colts now.
So they made it up there or they have transportation?
Yeah, we work with the churches, we have from downtown up to that place is a free bus route currently. So anybody can get on and ride that bus route, but that gets them up there. Yeah, no, it was just about.
Successful, okay.
I wonder, does the bus stop? Does it just go from downtown to the location?
No, it's a normal bus route.
Okay.
So
Okay, I wondered.
we just made that one free.
Thank you.
I have one more thing, and this is totally off the subject, but it kind of ties in with something Cindy said earlier. And I don't know how much pull you have with PD, but what's the protocol for police department following up on seemingly small crimes in the area that are probably committed by youth, like opening cars and getting in and that sort of thing? I want, and I know we're shorthanded with the police, I understand that, and I know that that's not a big thing, except that I do think that those kinds of things make citizens feel very, very unsafe in their neighborhoods, in their homes, you know? And I wonder if the PD has any manpower allocated to that. On Nextdoor, I see videos 35 times a day, and they have videos of people in their yard, in their car, doing these things. Is anything ever done about that, Mike?
I know in the past, in my first 2 years here, they do set up stings if it is like a big problem. Because there's a lot of people that have come in from out of the city, and then they kind of do this through certain areas of town and eventually make their way. There was a big one in my neighborhood here last year, and they did manage to get a few of the people there. I'll check up on as far as the youth go, because it does sound like this is an issue, and I hear it from Nextdoor. I know we assign people to the case. It does rank a little lower on the priority, but I'll check up and see what the follow-up is.
Yeah, and I wonder if that kind of activity then leads to more serious problems with the youth. And I don't know, but I would assume that it does, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if they're doing this to get drug money, you know, that's another
We
thing,
were talking about guns earlier.
yeah.
That's one of the main sources for a lot of these firearms that's being used is people leave them in their cars and their cars get broken into. And so PD last year did a big push as far as locking up your guns, making sure that that happens as well. But I will check into this a little more.
Now, along those same lines, when somebody says to me, I'm a community police, it has a whole different outlook from my viewpoint than what the police department considers community police.
Me too.
I
agree.
I think it's somebody that's in my neighborhood doing the best he can to control the community I live in. I don't know what the police department thinks it is, because the gentleman that spoke last, I know him real well, he comes to our meetings. very intelligent, very outgoing, but it's more about statistics and the groups, drug dealers and stuff like that. So I'd like somebody to explain to me what the police department considers a community police officer's duties.
Well, I appreciate that. If you dig into it a little more, they do a lot more than is indicated. Sometimes they do keep it close to the vest. I would be surprised, or you would be surprised if we did give like a full report as to what they do on a daily basis. They do keep that a little closer to the vest.
But this one is totally different than the officers we've had in the past.
Yeah.
And the officers in the past did, they got to know the community, they knew the people in the community, they were in the community. They were much more involved than the current.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. They are also stretched twice as far now.
Do they still have the priority, murder, shots? And I understand that, because if I got shot, I would like somebody to be there as fast as possible, but at some time, you've got to look at the lower level of those crimes and do something about it. Try to do something.
I hear you, and I think that, again, the recruitment numbers we see coming in is gonna help with that, but I hear you and I appreciate that.
I think if you look at the dockets, it's kind of sobering when you look at the court dockets. There's thousands and thousands of cases. I was shocked at how many dangerous dogs and even just running at large cases were actually on the dockets. And I sat in last week on a case where a neighbor of ours had all of her dogs killed.
Yeah, I read about it.
Right? Yeah, and I'm going back to see, and the judge did not just pass it off. They talked with the person who had those dogs, the dogs were put down. And they're not allowed to have dogs, I don't know.
They did put the dogs down.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
If it's the same one we're talking about, there's a
Yeah,
lot of that
it
stuff
is.
going on, so I really, we scream and holler and want other people to do it, but somehow we have to figure out how to take care of things.
The thing that I heard
Was people.
police showed up. Okay, there was a lot of communication over phone line with the police, but the police said they showed up when they heard a neighbor say, "Get your gun and shoot the dog," because that's the only way we're gonna be able to stop them from killing my dogs. And once they heard shoot or gun, the police were there.
Really?
I can't get too much into this.
Yeah,
There are some issues revolving around dispatch, how we dispatch these calls, the difference between a loose dog and a dangerous dog. We're working on that currently. That's being brought up to the 911 board. This case actually brought that to the forefront. It's not the 95% of the cases that we do get out and we actually solve or work, and it's the ones that you hear about, and it becomes like I don't know exactly how to say that, like a case study for issues that we have. But again, like Rich said, you don't realize the number of calls that they do to people always out there busting their butts. I know some people, make it look like they're out on lunch 2 hours a day. They're not, all these guys and girls out there, men and women who are doing their job, protecting us, they take it serious.
you get the feeling because they talk to us via Zoom that they don't want to park their car and come in here because they're so busy.
It is, and that's,
Because we used to get them here all the time for.
and then we went from 10 officers to 5, and yeah,
This was not the first time that these dogs had done this either. There were reports of seeing it running down the street with a cat in its mouth, a dead cat in its mouth.
Really?
Then there was another case where there was a dog getting out of a hole and everybody was talking about, oh, it's a dangerous dog. No, it's not a dangerous dog. There was so much animosity generated on the part of the self-proclaimed victim
Yeah.
that even after I got the landlord to replace the entire fence, they still went after the dog and euthanized the dog, even though it was safe. So we need to find a way as citizens, how do we get these things resolved?
Yeah.
Because the dog issue is like, it's bad. And it's bad all over the country. I was talking to a lady in Omaha, they're talking about culling loose dogs. There's so many of them. In Arkansas, I think it was actually in Arkansas.
Same with cats.
Culling of cats is on now. I was shocked when we were back in the TNR roadshow days. I was talking to people and people would just come, yeah, I shoot them.
I rode around Wall a couple of weeks ago, there's hundreds of hilltop everywhere.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and that was, 2020, the COVID outbreak. That's what exacerbated this. A lot of people didn't get their pets spayed and neutered during that time. We're seeing the result of that now. A lot of people they got pets.
Kansas
because they
Humane
were sick.
Society put a requirement that you have a meeting appointment to surrender your dog, which can be months in advance. And so this was basically creating a backdoor into our animal shelter and overwhelming our animal shelter. Because those people that have to move or have to get out, they put their dogs on the street. And that's when they come into the animal shelter. And we have a further reduction in our animal shelter capacity because we had, hopefully it's not still going on. We had a organization that was very closely with the animal shelter, keeping their adopted animals in the cages of the animal shelter, depriving a space of a loose dog. And then our last mayor, as a gimme to his associate, wanted to put these people in closer contact with our animal shelter. And we need to keep our animal shelter separate from that. We need to protect it. We need to make sure that people going into that shelter are not taking photos and exploiting the suffering of those animals or the people who have lost them to gain their shekels and abusing the animal shelter. I mean, do we have it in our minutes of threats being taken? I'm gonna break their arms. Spitting on our animal shelters, all fueled by this insane idea that you cannot have any killing whatsoever. And it's unreasonable, and the people demand that something be done about these loose dogs. I hear it all the time. And very few people in my neighborhood will even walk the streets because of fear of these dogs.
We lost mail service.
And the mail services that are lost.
And that one is unique to our region. That was our regional postmaster who came up with that plan. Not a fan of it at all. Every once in a while, the Republicans are right about government overstepping their bounds. I'm
He
just
looked at you, Paul.
say that in jest. I say that in jest. No, I say that in jest. They're all good points well taken, but yeah, there's some issues there with the post office, and unfortunately, it's like the trains. We can scream and cry all we want. I want to go down there and lay in front of these dang trains and stop them from backing us up for 2 hours.
Don't do it, Mike, don't do it.
Some days it's a little more tempting than others.
Why did we not have regulation over that? That's the thing that blew my mind.
With the trains.
The legislator that was on television said that they can't control that
No,
at all.
it's-
The federal government gave complete power to United Pacific Railways when
Well,
a
why
long
did
time
we
ago.
ever
The
let that
Civil War.
happen? That's insane.
This dates back to the Civil War.
Well,
Well,
we can rewrite
I
something.
hear you. Senator Jerry Moran, Senator Roger Marshall, Congressman Estes, these are the people to reach out to on that. And there is a lot of momentum to really regulate the rails after some of the train derailments here lately. Right, I'm gonna bring it up the next time I see him. We go speak to him in March. I'm gonna make sure to bring that up too, because that and the post office, those two are bugging me because again, the post office, from what I understand, this is the only place that there's supposed to be a process. There's a loose dog that scares a postman or it's aggressive. They send a notice out. We get 15 days or something like that to rectify it. And sometimes they just skip right over that. And so it just.
Yes, I had to replace my mailbox.
Same
I
here.
put one on the curb.
Same here.
And then 6 months later, somebody ran over it and I had to do it again.
We have community jail locks now, so door to door.
So I guess, we'll move towards adjourning. I just,
Wait, Mike has something, I have something,
Well,
make
actually,
sure everyone has a chance.
Don't forget your breakfast on the 10th.
Thank
Yes.
you, that's what I'm.
Yes, thank you. This Saturday, Dalton Glasscock will be there.
So we just joined 3 and 4.
Yeah, it's a joint breakfast. I've enjoyed working with Dalton. He's the one who's pushing repealing the campaign finance. So you might mention something to him at the meeting,
yeah,
but no, he's been great. He's really been good to work with. He's energetic.
Location,
What's that?
location.
So the new Christian Faith Center, it's 3310 East Pawnee.
Right there by Hillside and Pine.
Yeah,
Yep.
Pontiac West Side.
We
Nice and close, right
Will you send
here.
Something out, Jessica?
3310.
What, will you send something out on there?
Yeah, it's Pastor Moore's new church. We've had
Oh.
two breakfasts
Ooh, yeah.
so far. So yes, please come out. They're doing great work there. Pastor Moore's always, just a treasured individual in our city.
Yeah.
So please come out and join us. Eggs and bacon.
Oh.
You go to District 4, you get donuts with Dalton. You go to District 6, it's coffee with Maddie.
Right.
You go to District 1 and they have fruit and vegetables and all that stuff.
Oh, you can't say that anymore. Now they get paid breakfast.
Oh. So come on down to District 3 and we'll feed you eggs and bacon and all that good stuff.
At 10 o'clock, right?
9:30.
So.
I don't
So up to
think
10 though.
It won't get fed.
That one right over here, this Asian grocery store,
Oh.
they are having.
No, we eat regular food.
dragons
Oh.
Performance.
The new-
Yeah, and it's.
Sorry, I couldn't
so-
walk up with that.
I'm now planning to go yours, you might wanna tell people to avoid that.
Avoid Pontiac around is that the grocery store off of Washington?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, all right.
So
So
I-
avoid going to Pontiac then.
So I just wanna say one thing before we get a motion. Next month will be, I will have finished my 8 years on this board, and as chair, we will need, I just would like for you all to think, we lost our vice chair, Ron, when Ron passed away, so
Right.
we need really a chair and a vice chair, so just be thinking about whether that's a role.
You will actually be done, I won't let you.
Term limited. Term limited, right?
Yes, yeah, I will.
I didn't know if it happened during the middle of a session or that's what.
Yeah, Mike just said he's done with me and.
Well, that $1,500 might help.
No, so, but anyways, it'd be nice to have somebody to.
Well, I make a motion that in conjunction with adjourning, we find a chairman and a vice chairman.
Okay.
There's also on Saturday, the 24th at the Urban League, at 10 a.m. until noon, Misty Bruckner, who is the director of WSU's Public Policy and Management Center, is going to speak at the annual dinner for Wichita Independent Neighborhoods.
The annual breakfast.
Oh, we've changed it to an annual breakfast, finger food breakfast. So please come out if you are so moved. That's the 24th at 10 a.m.
Any other announcements? All right, well, you're gonna make that motion to adjourn then?
I just did.
Yeah.
Well, second.
I make a motion.
There was no second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Bye.
Motion carries.